I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons first. Thank you so much to my Bibliospren, Bibliohowlers, and my Bibliomancers. It means a lot to me that you give me your extra support for my passion and hobby. Hi everyone, Petrik here. So for today's video, this will be one of the most requested videos on my YouTube channel. So today I will be talking about my favorite ending or final book in the series that I have read up to this day. And in total, I have actually read, so surprisingly, a total of 85 series, and that doesn't include series that I DNF'd, manga, also incomplete series, and of course series that I haven't finished reading. I have finished a total of 85 series, and these include trilogies, duologies, a quartet, or even longer than that. And now I will narrow it down to my favorite top 10 final book of a series, or technically top 12, and I will talk about them in today's video, why it ended up being 12 instead of 10. I will be honest though, if you have watched my updated top 15 completed fantasy series video that I posted, I think at the beginning of this year, then you will have seen a lot of this series that I'm going to mention today. A lot of these final books, of course, have a lot of influence in making them become some of my favorite completed fantasy series of all time. But there will be about 1 or 2 changes because I will also include my favorite non-SFF series. And trust me, narrowing 85 to top 10, only top 10 is a difficult task, but I think I'm quite confident about my list for now. And one more thing, there will be no ranking to this list. These are my absolute final book of a series that I have read to this day. So I will begin, of course, with The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. I cannot begin this list without talking about this first, because The Hero of Ages is the conclusion to the Mistborn trilogy, and if you are familiar with my channel and reading journey, then you will know that Mistborn trilogy is the series that sparked my love for reading fantasy books in generally, because I have always read manga, but before reading Mistborn trilogy, I have never found my interest in reading fantasy novels yet, but this practically changed my life. It is not an exaggeration to say that the first Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson is the most important trilogy that I have ever read. Because without reading Mistborn trilogy at the right timing, I do not think I would have become the reader that I am today. So this one definitely is one of my favorite conclusions in a fantasy or in a series. I think Brandon Sanderson did such an excellent job in making sure that every plot and everything that has been established since the first book exploded in the final book. Whether you realize they have been planted or foreshadowed since Mistborn the Final Empire or not, but they definitely came around in a big convergence in The Hero of Ages. Loved this one very much, and Vin and also Elon became one of my favorite couples in fantasy genre. And seeing that The Hero of Ages and Mistborn trilogy sparked my love for reading fantasy novels, well, for this next conclusion, I think this one would be suitable to those of you who are newcomer to the fantasy genre, and this is the conclusion to the Rhaedia Revelations, The Heir of Navran, or Persepolis by Michael J. Sullivan. And it is quite surprising that I have read everything that Michael J. Sullivan has written in the world of Elon. That's about 19 books in total, and I still think that The Heir of Navran is still his best work so far because it is just so satisfying. Initially, when I first started reading the Rhaedia Revelations, I wasn't sure that I was going to love the series because I did not click that well with Theft of Swords, but everything changed after I reached The Heir of Navran Wintertide, and also Persepolis was nothing short of outstanding, and the characterizations and the character development that the characters went through throughout the entire 6-book series that is compiled into 3 omnibus, they are just so incredibly well done. And I think to this day with this series, The Rhaedia Revelations, Michael J. Sullivan wrote some of the best women in the fantasy genre. They are just so well written and easy to like. When I start reading a series, of course I always want the series to end very satisfyingly, and I got that in The Rhaedia Revelations. And after I finish reading The Rhaedia Revelations, I immediately know why so many people continue to love reading every book in the world of Elon, especially the one that revolves around Royce and Hadrian, one of the best duo in the fantasy genre. So of course, Heir of Navran will have to earn a spot in this list. The next concluding book that I have to mention is The Light of All That Falls by James Islington. This is the conclusion to the Licanius trilogy, a series that I think is still so underrated and under the radar in the booktube community, and well, honestly, in the fantasy community in general, because for whatever reason, it seems like those who really love the Wheel of Time they just don't like reading the Lycaenaeus trilogy. And for me, who feel mixed regarding the Wheel of Time, this is a trilogy that I adored. I think Caden is one of the best characters in fantasy, although I have to admit that Caden is so much more well written compared to the other characters in the Lycaenaeus trilogy. I will give it that. But what I love most about this trilogy, other than Caden, is how meticulously plotted the entire trilogy. Some readers have actually complained, saying that they don't remember some things in the trilogy. Sometimes they even said that this doesn't make sense. But you know what? Many of them are actually addressed in the trilogy. But I cannot fault them because this is very complex with a lot of things going on. And I think it is better for you to read the Lycaenaeus trilogy closer to each other, or even better, binge the trilogy like I did, because it works so much better. Even though the second and the third book in the trilogy have a detailed recap at the beginning of the book, but I do not think they are enough to actually capture the intricacies of the entire trilogy, and The Light of All Dead Falls provided an incredibly satisfying conclusion, a full circle conclusion to the trilogy. This is the trilogy that made me become a fan of James Arlington, and well, The Will of the Many, as some of you probably know by now, is a book that is so well loved this year, and I think it is well deserved. And for book number 4 and book number 5, this is a part of the same series, but I think I will have to mention the both of them because both of them actually features different characters, different main characters, and I will just get around to it. The first one is The Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie, the conclusion to the First Law trilogy. If Mistborn trilogy sparked my love for reading the fantasy genre, this one just established it even harder, because after reading the Mistborn trilogy, I read the First Law trilogy and I wanted a grim dark fantasy series. I absolutely got that from reading the First Law trilogy. The ending to this one is so unforgettable in my opinion. Whether you like it or not, I know that this is a controversial ending, but there is one thing you can say about the ending. It is unforgettable and it is fitting to the First Law trilogy. This is one of the 2 best books that Joe Abercrombie has ever written in my opinion, and I have read everything by him in the First Law world. I think this is a masterpiece in the grimdark fantasy genre. Last Argument of Kings also features one of the best duel scenes that I have ever read in fantasy novels. And the other best book by Joe Abercrombie that he has ever written, in my opinion, is the conclusion to the recent trilogy in the world of the First Law, the Age of Madness trilogy, The Wisdom of Crowds. As far as technicality goes, I think this one is more well written compared to the First Law trilogy. But there is something about the First Law trilogy that always feels special to me, and if I have to choose, I'm going to choose the First Law trilogy over the Age of Madness trilogy, because the iconic characters in that trilogy is just, they are irreplaceable. But this is, I think, technically better because Joe Abercrombie has improved as a storyteller and also as a writer, and I don't think this is far-fetched to say that the ending to The Wisdom of Crowds is incredibly emotional. I will not give you any details, but those who have read The Wisdom of Crowds, I think will know what I'm talking about. I do not think you can read the Age of Madness trilogy without reading the First Law trilogy first though. I think it is at least mandatory to read the First Law trilogy first. But yeah, Last Argument of Kings and also The Wisdom of Crowds are some of the best concluding book that I have ever read, and they are the best books by Joe Abercrombie. And because Joe Abercrombie is one of the best close quarter combat scenes, I think it is time to talk about another one of my favorite authors of all time, and another author who is excellent at writing characterizations and also close quarter combat scenes that doesn't involve magic. And of course, it is Brad by John Gwynne, The Conclusion to the Faithful and the Fallen. When I first read this one, I was just absolutely gobsmacked. It was utterly incredible. It was everything that I want from a concluding volume to an epic fantasy. It has amazing characterizations, amazing and rewarding arc, satisfying character development, and epic battle that are somehow so immersive and vivid. It features about 100 pages of battle scenes, of final battle scenes, and I never felt bored reading any of them. It was just so intense. And I remember reading Rat for the first time. I read this, I think, up to midnight, and it was amazing. I ended up staring at the wall after I finished it. I almost cried. So many emotions. I love everything about Rat, and if I have to choose, then I'm going to choose Rat as my favorite book by John Gwynne. Even though this is technically not the conclusion to the Banished Land saga. And yeah, well, the 7th book that I'm going to mention today is again another book by John Gwynne, and it is my second favorite book by him. This is A Time of Courage, the conclusion to the Banished Land saga, and also the conclusion to the Of Blood and Bone trilogy, which is the sequel trilogy to The Faithful and the Fallen. So Of Blood and Bone trilogy takes place about more than 100 years, I think 130 years after the end of Red. And I know there are technically two different series, but at the same time, although the first book, A Time of Dread, actually features a lot of new main characters, the storyline once you reach the second book, A Time of Blood, and of course this one, A Time of Courage, they are still very related to what happened in The Faithful and the Fallen. And reading this without actually reading The Faithful and the Fallen first would actually spoil all the major events of The Faithful and the Fallen. So I don't recommend that. Plus, Of Blood and Bone trilogy will actually improve a lot if you have read The Faithful and the Fallen first. Because although I really love the new main characters of Blood and Bone trilogy, it is impossible to replace my connection with the characters of The Faithful and the Fallen. And every mention of them, every single time there is an Easter egg or flashback to any of the characters in The Faithful and the Fallen, they are some of the best part of Blood and Bone trilogy, and also A Time of Courage. And yet this even features an even bigger battle compared to Red. This is the conclusion to the Banished Land saga after all. And once again, it is an incredibly satisfying ending, and I loved it. I loved it very much. I remember that A Time of Courage actually won my favorite book of the year. I think it was in the year 2020. And on that year, I also read the best concluding book to a non-SFF series that I have ever read, and it is The Labyrinth of the Spirits by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. I think this one somehow is kinda underrated in the Cemetery of Forgotten Books series, because so many people love the first book, The Shadow of the Wind, and it is a very well-deserved praise. The Shadow of the Wind is incredible, but it is not as good as The Labyrinth of the Spirits in my opinion, and it is such a shame that so many people stopped after reading The Shadow of the Wind for whatever reason, because back when they read The Shadow of the Wind, they thought it was a one-off standalone novel and then there's no continuation. But there is a continuation, 3 of them. And this one is kind of like a big convergence to everything that Carlos Ruiz Zafón has established in the previous 3 books. The Shadow of the Wind, The Angel's Game, and The Prisoner of Heaven. And everything came in the big convergence in The Labyrinth of the Spirits. Love this one very much, and believe me, if you have read The Shadow of the Wind, you will want to read the entire series to get around to this. It is absolutely brilliant, and I'm still super sad that Carlos Ruiz Zafón has passed away. I think this is a genius storyteller lost to the world too soon. And moving on to the next one, although I did mention at the beginning of this video that there is no ranking to this list, I will have to say that Jade Legacy by Fondali is the best concluding volume to a trilogy that I have ever read. I know that is a very high praise. I know some might say that that is insane, but it is my honest opinion and my honest thought. This is Jade Legacy is the best concluding volume to a trilogy that I have ever read, and it immediately, upon finishing Jade Legacy, it immediately escalated the entire trilogy into becoming my favorite trilogy of all time. It is that good. I have made a video on why you should read the Green Bone Saga, and I have talked about why I love the Green Bone Saga so many times for the past 2 or 3 years, or the past 2 years, because this was my favorite book and the best book that I read in the year 2021. But yeah, as far as ending goes, I think this is just flawless. It is an absolutely amazing book for me. Hands down, a masterpiece in the genre, and the way Fondali utilized time jumps in her books, especially in Jade Legacy, it was so masterfully done, and the characterizations and the characters arc, I don't think I need to say anything else about this. They are all extremely well written, and Kaul Hilo is one of the best characters of all time. Look, just read this trilogy if you haven't read it. I think Jade Legacy is a must read for every fantasy fans. Jade Legacy was the best book of the year 2021 for me. Well, the next one is the best book of the year 2022. And yeah, this is Speaking Bones by Ken Liu, the conclusion to the Dandelion Dynasty series. Love this one very much. Last year, the year 2022, it was practically the year of the Dandelion for me, because everything I talk about, everything that I love, none of them can match the overall quality of The Wall of Storms and also Speaking Bones. Well, technically, The Wall of Storms actually won my favorite book of the year 2022, but this is the best book being released in the year 2022, and it tied at the #1 spot as the best book that I read last year. As far as conclusion goes, this one actually contains so many things happening. I'm still flabbergasted to this day that Ken Liu managed to conclude this quartet so satisfyingly, because there were so many things, and even though it is a quartet, the number of events that happen, some can even argue that the events that happen in the Dandelion Dynasty can be fit into a 10-book series. I mean, just the Grace of Kings alone already contains so many pivotal events. And when you count the big and epic moments that happen in The Wall of Storms, The Veiled Throne, and also Speaking Bones, this is one of the most underrated fantasy series that I have ever read. It is also one of the best ones. Speaking Bones is a magnificent culmination of everything in the Dandelion Dynasty. And just like the Green Bone Saga, it is also different compared to many other epic fantasy series that I have read. And I honestly believe that Ken Liu is a genius. Seriously, if you don't believe that, just watch the interview that I hosted, that I chatted with Ken Liu on my YouTube channel. You will see just how intelligent and smart he is. Well, I only have 2 books left on this list, and I think many of you who follow my channel will know what these 2 books are, because they are conclusion to a massive epic fantasy series. And the first one is Assassin's Fate by Robin Hobb. This is the conclusion to the Fits and the Fool trilogy, which is the final trilogy in the entire realm of the Elderlings series. This is, in my opinion, damn near perfection. If you ask me what to critic about this one, I have nothing. It is truly a masterpiece in character-driven epic fantasy. I mean, the Fits and the Fool journey has begun since Assassin's Apprentice, and that's a total of 16 books, even though some books like the Lifeship Traders and also the Rainwild Chronicles Quartet doesn't feature a lot of Fits and the Fool, but still the presence of the Fits and the Fool in the entire 16-book series is unmissable. Their actions have repercussions, and although Fits is one of the characters that I always want to slap, I also cannot help but feel really sad and empathize with him, because he's just so real. He's truly like a real person that I know. And Assassin's Fate is a culmination of everything that Robin Hobb has published in the realm of the Elderlings. I love every page of Assassin's Fate from the first page to the last. And yeah, you can absolutely bet that this is an emotional final book of a series. Absolutely emotional. It is very sad, and also somehow utterly satisfying as well. I can only applaud Robin Hobb for creating this masterpiece of a series and also concluding book. And finally, the last book in today's list, the last best book of a series that I have read, and of course, it will have to be a final book that I read in the same year as the realm of the Elderlings. And it is The Crippled God by Stephen Erickson, the conclusion to the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I was genuinely a bit terrified when I was about to read this one, because I did not like The Dust of Dreams. The first half of the final sequence of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, because Dust of Dreams and also The Crippled God was originally slated to be, it was supposed to be one big book, but it is divided into 2 volumes, and I think everything about Dust of Dreams served to make sure The Crippled God became something truly epic and unforgettable. Then yeah, I think I cannot say too much about The Crippled God now, because I don't want to spoil you if you haven't read Malazan Book of the Fallen. Somehow I feel that even mentioning the character's name now can be categorized as spoiler, and I do not want that. If you want to know my full thoughts regarding The Crippled God, you can check out my review on my Goodreads or on my blog, Novel Notions. But yeah, this is one of my favorite books in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and that's saying a lot, because there are a lot of absolutely incredible books in the entire 10-book series, but this is one of the top best one, together with Memories of Vice and also The Bone Hunters. And I actually finished The Crippled God in the year 2018, and now after 5 years I finally want to read The God Is Not Willing, the first book in the Witness trilogy, which is the sequel trilogy to the Malazan Book of the Fallen, taking place about a decade after the ending of the Crippled God. But yeah, to wrap this up, the Crippled God is nothing short of epic, and although it did not conclude every single plotline that, well, happened in the entire 10-book series, but the main one has been concluded, in my opinion, very satisfyingly. Not gonna lie, this is definitely a challenging and intimidating series, but it is worth your time if you love epic fantasy and also rewarding epic fantasy series. So yeah, that's it. That's the top 10 or the top 12 best final book of a series that I have ever read to this day. As I said in the beginning of this video, if you have watched my updated top 15 completed fantasy series, you will have seen like 11 books that I listed today in that video. Only The Labyrinth of the Spirits by Carlos Ruiz Zafón was not in that top 15 completed fantasy series list because it is not a fantasy book. It is a historical fiction or literary fiction, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, this is, to this day, as of 2023, the top 10 or the top 12 best final book of a series that I have read, and I look forward to reading and completing more series because as of now, I have completed 85 series. And yeah, this is my list. And lastly, before I end this video, I just want to say that I have posted a full spoiler-free review of each book I talk about in today's video, either on my Goodreads page or blog Novel Notions, or maybe even on my YouTube channel. But yeah, I think that's about it from me today. Do let me know what you think about my list, and of course, do tell me what are some of your favorite final book in the series that you have ever read as of 2023. As always, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for your support. Bye bye. Lastly, I want to say thank you so much once again to all my patrons who keep on supporting me.